Hello and welcome to More to Come with Dee Sarton. I'm Dee and I'm really glad you're with me today. This is a fun project that I am launching in a late season of life. But that's the whole idea. You know what? I want to have a good old age. And I think a lot of you do too. So that's why we're here, and that's what I'm going to be talking about throughout my journey on YouTube. How can we grow in faith? How can we grow in wisdom, purpose, health, and even wonder as we grow older? Well, that's the question. And experts are looking at that and they're coming up with all kinds of information to kind of help us so that we can get on the right path. Experts say that there are 4 predictors of a person having a good old age. Now, you know how they do that. They kind of distill all this information down and try to put it into like bullet points. And so here are some of the bullet points that they point to. One is maintaining physical activity. If you do that, then that's a good predictor that you'll have a good old age. That's one. Number 2 is staying socially connected. That's really important. Number 3 is financial stability. Goodness knows that's a challenge for a lot of us, isn't it? I mean, you just wonder, do I have enough to get through this season of life? It can be a worry, and it can be sometimes something we didn't have a lot of control over. As a matter of fact, the other 2 are kind of the same way. That physical activity can really be challenging if you've come up against a wall and you're having a real physical challenge. And so maybe you don't have a lot of control over that one. The same is true with staying socially connected. Things change, people die. Unfortunately, that comes along with this season of life, doesn't it? But also, sometimes we have to move to be closer to family. We have so many things that can affect how we stay socially connected. And again, financial stability can be affected by things beyond our control. But number 4, the 4th thing that they say is a great predictor of whether you will have a good old age is having purpose and meaning in your life. And now that is something that we can have more control over. It can still be hard. It can be hard to figure it out. I know I've found myself thinking, why am I here? What is the purpose of this season of life? And I talk to my friends and I'm hearing the same thing. It's a really big question. But today I want to share a very inspiring story to you about the fact that there really is more to come. And we really can find purpose, sometimes in places that we may have think we left behind. So anyway, I'm going to get to that in a minute. But if you haven't subscribed yet, I'm finding out that that's kind of important to building this YouTube channel. And here's why I want to build it. I really want to interview some great people, some inspiring people, people that would enjoy the fact that somebody wants to ask them about how they're having a great old age. But sometimes you need to build your YouTube channel before you can get some of those interviews. And so I'd love it if you would subscribe and join me on this journey. And thanks to those of you who have. It's just been an amazing couple of weeks since I launched the channel. And I'm looking forward to where it's going to go and connecting with you in deeper ways and with more of you. So having said that, purpose. Often late in life, our purpose comes from continuing to use our gifts, but maybe in different ways. Maybe we have to take a step back, look at our gifts and say, how could I reinvent myself? How could I do something different? Maybe with the gifts that I really have, that I know I have because I've lived with them now for decades. And that I just thought maybe I'm getting too old, or maybe nobody's interested in that anymore, or maybe I'm not relevant anymore. And I have a story to tell you that I think will inspire you as much as it did me. First of all, if you don't know the name Tony Bennett, then I want to introduce you to Tony Bennett, legendary musician, a singer. And I grew up hearing his music as a child. Probably the first song I heard him sing was, "I left my heart in San Francisco." And that song just stayed in my mind. I remember going to San Francisco, and that was like the soundtrack of my visit as a child to San Francisco. But then there's so many more. He sang songs out of the Great American Songbook. Jazz, but jazz that was so accessible to everyone that people just loved and enjoyed, and he was really quite an entertainer. Well, he had some rough spots, and his life, like all of our lives, it had its ups and its downs, and he really did have some pretty down times. His career would take a dive, and then he'd have to reinvent himself. They said about Tony Bennett that he always accepted a challenge, that he was one of those people who just couldn't say no to a good challenge. And so his son became his manager many years ago. It was 1986, so that's 40 years ago. And Tony Bennett's been dead for a while now, but his son was his manager for many, many years. And I love this because his son came up with an idea, pitched it to Tony, and Tony, because he was always up for a challenge, decided, let's do it. And this was when he was in his 70s, I believe. And that was to sing duets with other recording artists, many of them younger, much, much younger, and create a whole songbook of these songs sung as duets that could be rediscovered by this generation and enjoyed again by those of us in the older generation. Well, let me tell you, they just took off, and maybe you've listened to them. If you haven't, just type in into YouTube, Tony Bennett duets. It's Bennett with 2 N's and 2 T's, and you will see he did duets with so many different people, from Carrie Underwood to Amy Winehouse, Michael Bublé. I could just go on and on and on. But the story I want to tell you that's so special is that when he was 84 years old, he recorded with Aretha Franklin, who was 69 years old, probably one of the most beautiful duets I have ever heard. Now, it's probably not the most famous of the duets he did, because he did duets with Lady Gaga. And let me tell you what, they ended up doing a whole album together. And those songs are amazing too. And if you didn't like Lady Gaga before, you'd see her in a whole different light in these duets. As a matter of fact, one of the songs that he did with her made him the oldest living person to have a #1 song on the Billboard charts, or whatever they call those charts. I'm not sure. Anyway, he was in his 80s. And you know what? With Lady Gaga, he was still performing live after he had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's when he was in his 90s. That's a whole other story, and just really amazing. He could remember the lyrics even though he couldn't remember so many other things. His memory had really failed him, but not the lyrics of those songs that were so embedded in him. Anyway, that's kind of a little rabbit trail. Getting back to the song with Aretha Franklin. This was when he was 84, she was 69. She had just been diagnosed and was struggling with a health issue, pretty serious. She didn't really reveal what it was, but it was pretty serious. And when you watch it, and I hope you will, it's the song called How Do You Keep the Music Playing? It's a song about sustaining love, romantic love over a lifetime. And it is gorgeous. It's beautiful. It showcases both of them in absolutely their astounding talent. And at this age, and what I found so encouraging about that is that, we were given these gifts. And yes, Tony Bennett didn't sing exactly the same way he sang when he was in his 30s or 40s, or even 50s, but it was still beautiful. He still worked at it. He still had to grow and learn, and he still did his scales. He still did bel canto, his son was saying. He still had a trainer. He still did all of those things to maintain that. And again, he's an extraordinary talent. But he wasn't afraid to use his gift in a new way, in a new challenging way, and still be relevant, still be contributing, still be inspiring people. And I find that incredibly inspiring. I think it's just one of those stories that, yeah, I'm no Tony Bennett, but I like to think that I can still take a challenge, and I can still grow, and I can still learn and reinvent myself. And I think you can too. I think we all can. And that's why I'm here, is to encourage you that we need to coach each other up. We need to encourage each other that we've been given long life. It is a gift that not everyone gets. And so to be able to embrace it and say, yep, I'm an old coot, but I can still live and live well. I think it's just an amazing story. So Tony Bennett inspired me, and it really goes back to this whole idea that one of the greatest predictors of having a good old age is preserving your purpose and meaning in life. And that leads me to, really probably one of the biggest points that I could ever make, and that is that, God has a plan for all of our lives. And in the Bible, it tells us that He has prepared good works for us before we were even born. And those good works are the things that we do that can bless other people, ways we can use our gift to make other people happy or feel loved, on and on and on. And so I just wanted to encourage you that it isn't over yet. We still have so much yet to enjoy and thrive in. And I want to take you to a psalm. It's just a great psalm. I have it underlined and starred because it talks about us oldsters. It's Psalm 92. And Psalm 92 is a song about being thankful and faithful. Thankful and faithful. If you're thankful and faithful, you'll be fruitful. That's what this psalm says. So being thankful, a grateful heart, that's another thing I've run across in so much of the research that I'm doing now and all these books behind me on having a good old age is if you are a grateful person, if you're able to be thankful and live a life of gratitude, then that is also going to be just a huge predictor of a good old age. And again, that's something that we can have control over. I mean, it's not easy. I'm not always grateful, and I'm sure, there are a lot of times when, a lot of hard things that it makes it hard to be grateful. But if we can start to adopt that outlook on life, and having a relationship with God really helps with that a ton. And so that's why I like to always try to share something of the truth that I find in God's Word. And in this particular psalm, it's meaningful to me because it talks about being thankful, being faithful, being fruitful. And when you get to verse 12 in Psalm 92, it says, "But the godly will flourish like palm trees." And I want to stop there just real quick because it says, "But the godly will flourish like palm trees." And I sometimes think when you hear a phrase like that, you think, oh, the godly, perfect people or people who think they're perfect. Or somehow something that I cannot attain. And yeah, that's absolutely true. You know what? That vision of godly, being perfect, being somehow better than everybody else, you know what? That is something we can't attain. And that isn't the purpose of the Bible at all. The godly it's talking about here, those are the people who honor God. They look to Him. And I was mentioning earlier that most of those predictors, the financial one, what were the other ones? The financial, physical activity, especially those two, we don't have a ton of control over that as we age. Those things can really creep up on us and be difficult. But this thing about finding purpose and meaning in life, now that's one thing that we can have a little bit more control over. We can also have more control over who we choose to follow. And God is telling us that if we'll honor Him, if we'll follow Him, then we'll flourish like palm trees. Goes on to say, and grow strong like the cedars of Lebanon. Those were trees that could be 30 feet in circumference, 120 feet tall, and known, the cedars of Lebanon were known as just being just these incredible trees, strong, solid, immovable. And so that's a great vision for us, isn't it? As we age, to be strong and in that way continue to flourish. Now, verse 13 says, "For they are transplanted to the Lord's own house." Now, friends, we want to be transplanted into the Lord's own house because that's the house that is the real more to come. That's the more to come after this life. And I believe with all my heart that I have that to look forward to, that is the hope that we have, that this is true. Jesus said He was going to leave and create this amazing place, this home with many rooms, a mansion with many rooms. And that if He would go to prepare that place, then He would come back again and get us. Well, you know what? I believe it, and I will probably unfold that more and more in these YouTube videos. But that's where we want to be transplanted, because that's where we will flourish. It says they flourish in the courts of our God. So in this life, yes, in this life, and in the next life. But here's verse 14. Even in old age, they will still produce fruit. They will remain vital and green. You know, I'm going to tell you a little confession. It's kind of hard for me to do these YouTube videos because I'm a vain person. And, you know, it's just harder and harder to get dolled up and do things. You know, I just struggle with that. It's a vanity. It's so vain. But it's real, and I don't love that. But, you know, I've noticed in other people that I love and admire that as they age, the beauty that they have at that season of life, when it's from the inside, when it spills over, you kind of forget about the wrinkles. You kind of forget about the other things because they are still producing fruit. And in a new way, they are vital and green. Yeah, not like in our 20s, no. Not like in our 30s or 40s or even 50s. I think 50s are still young. If you're joining us and you're in your 50s, I'm so glad you're here. But you're a young'un. And you know what? If I can still remain vital and green until the day I die, and I hope I can, I pray that I can. And this verse in Psalm 92 says that I can if I am honoring God, following Him, learning His ways, growing in Him, growing in faith. And that's really the bottom line. You know, we can be inspired by wonderful talents like Tony Bennett, and it just thrills my soul. I still hope you'll go listen to that song. How do we keep the music playing? Tony Bennett, Aretha Franklin. I hope you'll go listen to that. But even more than that, if you haven't already, I really hope and pray that you will discover the truth in the Bible. It's going to mean so much to you as you age. I mean, the verses just jump off the page. They just absolutely make me thrilled that there is more to come. And I'm thrilled that you would listen this long and stay with me here on this YouTube channel that is brand new. If you think a friend would enjoy it, please share it. And I would, again, love to hear where you're watching from, what you're finding is your purpose in this season of life. Encourage me, inspire me, tell me what you're thinking. Or if you're still working on it, then what are the questions that you have? Maybe I can dig up some answers. Maybe I can find some experts to talk to, or maybe just pray about it and pray with you over those things. I'm going to leave it at that for this edition of More to Come with Dee Sarton. Thank you so much for being with me, and I pray that you have a wonderful week ahead. I'll see you next week.